Ethan had always preferred the quiet of his ranch to the bustle of town. Every morning he woke up before the sun, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and walked among the fields, checking on the cattle. He had inherited the ranch from his father, and while it was modest, it was his world, and he felt safest within its fences. The rust of the old barn doors, the smell of fresh hay, and the rhythmic lowing of cows were comforting, predictable, and familiar. Despite his competence with animals and equipment, Ethan had always been shy with people. He avoided large gatherings. Small talk made him nervous, and he often felt awkward when someone new visited the ranch. Most of the time, he preferred observing from a distance rather than being in the spotlight. That was why, when he heard the rumble of a truck coming down his dirt driveway that late afternoon, a small spark of unease ignited in his chest. The truck was unusually large, its tires throwing small clouds of dust into the warm air. And the figure stepping out of it was even more surprising. She was tall, uncommonly so, and moved with a confident ease that made her seem almost larger than life. Her hat shaded her face, but there was no mistaking the bright glint of amusement in her eyes. She was smiling broadly, almost as if she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Ethan stepped out of the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. He had expected a simple buyer or maybe a traveling worker. What he did not expect was Clara, the so-called giant cowgirl he had heard about in town. Rumor had it she could handle anything on a ranch, and her presence always drew attention, though most found her intimidating. Ethan tried to greet her casually, but his words felt small in the shadow of her towering presence. "Hello," he said, trying to sound normal. His voice cracked slightly, betraying the nervousness he felt. Clara's grin widened. "Well, hello there, little rancher," she teased, her tone playful. Ethan blinked at her, unsure if he should feel insulted or amused. There was a spark in her eyes, a sense that she found this encounter far more entertaining than he did. She approached him easily, the ground almost seeming to quake beneath her steps. Ethan took a small step back instinctively, feeling the weight of her gaze. "I hear you could use some help around here," she said, her voice confident and warm at the same time. "I thought I'd drop by and see for myself." Ethan swallowed. I usually manage," he stammered, unsure if he should be offering tea or if he should be asking her to sit down or if he should run. Clara laughed lightly, a sound that carried across the yard. It wasn't a mocking laugh, but it was bold, teasing, and full of energy. She clearly enjoyed his discomfort. "Don't worry," she said, her tone softening slightly. "I'm not here to scare you. I just thought it might be fun to work together for a while. Show me your ranch, and maybe I can lend a hand." Ethan hesitated, glancing over at his fields and the barn. It was unusual to have someone this confident, this bold, offering help. Usually, people either left him to his work or gave instructions he didn't understand. There was something different about Clara, something that made it hard to say no. "All right," he said finally, his voice quieter than he intended. "I guess I could show you around." Clara's grin turned mischievous. She leaned slightly forward, resting a hand on her hip. "You know," she said, her voice carrying a playful edge, "you're going to bed with me tonight." Ethan froze. His eyes widened and he stammered, completely misunderstanding her meaning. "What?" he asked, his face flushing bright red. She laughed, a full, hearty laugh that made her shake with amusement. "Relax, Shy Rancher," she said. "I meant you're going to spend the night here, resting after a long day on the ranch. Don't get all flustered." Ethan exhaled, a mix of relief and embarrassment washing over him. Clara's teasing was unusual, but in a strange way, it broke the tension. He had spent his life carefully avoiding misunderstandings, and here was someone who had made one for him on purpose, just to see his reaction. After the initial awkwardness passed, Clara followed Ethan as he led her around the ranch. She moved, with surprising grace even among the uneven ground and livestock. She asked questions about each area, her curiosity genuine. "Do you handle all of this by yourself?" she asked, pointing to the barn, the pens, and the fences. "Yes," Ethan admitted. "I do most of it alone." "Impressive," Clara said, her voice full of admiration. "But you know, there's no shame in accepting a little help sometimes." They spent the next hour checking on the cattle, repairing fences, and moving hay. Clara's energy seemed endless, and she worked with a competence that left Ethan slightly in awe. At first, he kept his distance, observing her as she effortlessly lifted heavy objects and managed the livestock. Gradually, however, her easy laughter and willingness to teach him a few tricks drew him out of his shell. By mid-afternoon, Ethan began to see her not just as a giant figure who intimidated him, but as a person, someone confident, lively, and surprisingly kind. He found himself laughing at her jokes, offering suggestions, and even letting her correct some of his old habits around the ranch. It was a strange, refreshing feeling, like the walls he had built around himself for years were slowly crumbling. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting golden light over the fields, Clara stood on the porch looking out over the ranch. "You know," she said, her tone playful again, "I'm glad I came here today. I think we make a good team." Ethan smiled a little awkwardly but genuinely. "Yeah," he agreed. "I didn't think someone like you would fit in here." Clara chuckled. "Someone like me? What do you mean?" "I don't know," he admitted. "You're different. Bigger, stronger, more confident. I'm just me." "Exactly," she said, grinning. "Different doesn't mean worse, and trust me, being you isn't so bad either." For a moment, they both stood in silence, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cows, the creak of the barn doors, the soft rustle of wind through the fields. Ethan realized that this day had been unlike any other in his quiet life. It had been challenging, exciting, and even a little scary, but in a good way. He had met someone who didn't just tolerate him, but who actively encouraged him to step out of his comfort zone. As the shadows grew longer, Clara repeated her earlier teasing remark, this time with a dramatic wink. "Remember, you're going to bed with me tonight." Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "I'll try not to misunderstand this time." Clara laughed too, the sound echoing across the yard, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt a spark of anticipation for the night ahead. Not fear, not anxiety, but genuine curiosity about the company he was about to keep, and the new friendship that was beginning to form on his little ranch. As the sky turned pink and purple with the setting sun, Ethan realized that maybe having someone unexpected on the ranch wasn't so bad. Maybe it could even be exciting. And for the first time in years, he felt ready to welcome the unknown, to see where the day and the evening might take him. The ranch felt alive in a new way that evening, and Ethan couldn't help but think that this encounter with Clara, the giant cowgirl, might just be the start of something entirely new, something that would push him, challenge him, and, in ways he couldn't yet imagine, change him forever. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Ethan led Clara toward the small farmhouse at the edge of the ranch. The soft creak of the wooden steps under their feet seemed louder in the quiet evening. The ranch had a different feeling at this hour, calm, peaceful, and almost magical. The shadows stretched across the fields, and the distant sound of cows settling for the night added a sense of gentle rhythm to the scene. Clara looked around, her tall figure silhouetted against the fading light. "It's really beautiful here," she said, her voice softening. "I can see why you love it." Ethan shrugged, a little embarrassed by her compliment. "It's just home," he said. "I've spent my whole life here." "It's nothing special," Clara laughed lightly. "Home is special if it means something to you. And this place, it clearly does." She paused and looked at him with a curious expression. "You work so hard every day. Don't you ever take a break?" Ethan hesitated. He was so used to the routine of the ranch that he rarely thought about taking time for himself. "Not really," he admitted. "There's always something to do." "Exactly," Clara said with a grin. "That's why I'm here. Even the strongest rancher needs a little company sometimes, and a little fun." Ethan felt a small smile tug at his lips. Her energy was infectious. It was hard not to be drawn into her world, even if he was still a little unsure of how to act around her. Inside the farmhouse, the air smelled faintly of wood smoke and fresh bread. Ethan had started preparing a simple dinner before Clara arrived, but she immediately took over, moving with ease in the kitchen. She chopped vegetables with surprising skill, arranged the table, and even started humming a tune as she worked. Ethan watched, both impressed and slightly envious of her confidence. "You're really good at this," he said cautiously, trying to compliment her without sounding awkward. Clara looked over her shoulder and winked. "I've had practice," she said. "Growing up on my family's ranch taught me a lot. And honestly, it's fun to see you blush when I take over." Ethan felt his cheeks heat up, but he tried to focus on helping. Together they prepared a simple meal of roasted vegetables, bread, and stew from the fresh meat Ethan had raised. The kitchen felt warm, both from the stove and from the growing sense of camaraderie between them. After dinner, they cleared the table and sat near the fireplace. The room was cozy, with the soft crackle of the fire filling the silence. Clara leaned back in her chair, looking relaxed but still full of energy. Ethan, on the other hand, fidgeted slightly, unused to having someone so bold and lively in his space. "So," Clara began, her voice playful, "about that whole going to bed with me tonight thing. I think we need to clarify it." Ethan laughed nervously. "I hope so," he said. "Because I might have misunderstood you earlier." Clara grinned. "I meant you're going to rest here in the farmhouse after a long day. Nothing more. You're overthinking it." Relief washed over Ethan, and he couldn't help but laugh at his own reaction. "I guess I did," he admitted, shaking his head. "I've never had anyone joke with me like that before, see?" Clara said, her tone warm. "There's no reason to be nervous. We're just two people sharing a space for the night. That's all." The tension eased, replaced by a comfortable sense of friendship. Ethan felt himself opening up slowly, telling Clara stories about his life on the ranch, his childhood, and even his little fears. Clara listened intently, sometimes nodding, sometimes teasing him gently, but always with interest and understanding. Then she shared some of her own stories. Her tall frame had often made her the center of attention, which she didn't always like. People assumed she could do everything perfectly just because of her size, but she had her own insecurities and challenges. Ethan listened, surprised to see vulnerability beneath her confident exterior. For the first time, he realized that being bold didn't mean being fearless. It just meant facing the world with courage, even when you felt uncertain inside. As the evening grew darker, Clara suggested a small challenge to make the night more fun. "How about a game?" she asked. "A little competition to see who knows the ranch better." Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "A competition?" "Yes," Clara said, her grin mischievous. "We'll see who can identify the most things in the barn without looking. You go first." They spent the next hour laughing as they navigated the barn by touch alone, guessing the positions of hay bales, tools, and even the cattle. Ethan discovered that Clara's confidence extended even to playful games, while Clara realized that Ethan had a sharp mind for details she had overlooked. The game brought them closer, breaking down the remaining barriers of shyness and unfamiliarity. By the time they returned to the house, both were laughing and slightly out of breath. Ethan realized he had never spent an evening so full of laughter and light-hearted energy. It felt different from his quiet, solitary routine, but it felt good. Very good. Later, they settled near the fireplace again, sipping warm tea. The room was quiet except for the fire and the occasional rustle of wind outside. Ethan glanced at Clara, who was staring thoughtfully into the flames. "You know," she said quietly, "I didn't come here just to help with the ranch. I wanted to see what it's like to live simply, to work hard, and to connect with someone who appreciates the land as much as you do." Ethan nodded, understanding her words more than he expected. "I'm glad you came," he admitted. "I didn't know I needed company like this, but I do." Clara smiled, a gentle, sincere smile this time. "See, you're learning to relax already. That's progress." They talked more that night, sharing hopes for the future, small dreams, and even silly stories from their past. Ethan realized that friendship could be built in unexpected ways, through shared work, laughter, and honesty. Clara's presence had changed the rhythm of the ranch for the evening, bringing warmth, energy, and a reminder that life could be more than routine. Eventually, the fire burned low and Clara stretched, preparing to rest. "Well," she said, standing tall, "I think it's time we both got some sleep. Big day tomorrow." Ethan felt a surprising sense of comfort. "Yeah, sleep sounds good." They headed to their respective rooms, the farmhouse quiet except for the soft sounds of the night. Ethan lay in bed reflecting on the day. The timid rancher who had greeted Clara that morning felt different from the man now resting. He felt braver, lighter, and more open to the world beyond the fences of his ranch. Outside, the stars twinkled brightly over the fields, a reminder of the vast, beautiful world surrounding them. Ethan realized that meeting someone like Clara had opened a door he didn't know existed. It wasn't just about laughter or games or even learning new ways to manage the ranch. It was about connection, trust, and the courage to step beyond his comfort zone. Clara, in her room, thought the same. She had come expecting a day of work and maybe a little adventure. Instead, she found friendship, laughter, and the kind of honest connection that made life richer. Despite her confident exterior, she too felt a sense of peace, a feeling that this ranch and this timid rancher had something unique to offer her. And so, under the quiet night sky, with the gentle sounds of the countryside surrounding them, two very different people rested. One tall and bold, the other shy and careful. They had discovered something unexpected, a bond built on respect, humor, and shared experiences. It was a night neither would forget, a night that promised new beginnings, new understanding, and the possibility of a friendship that could last far beyond a single day on the ranch. As sleep came, both Ethan and Clara dreamed not just of the day past but of the days ahead. Days filled with work, laughter, and perhaps challenges that would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. But they felt ready, because they had found in each other the courage to face both the ordinary and the extraordinary together.